This is Short Hammer. It is the 10th of April, 2022, and this is Trading Zones. Um, been on a bit of a sabbatical. Still been trading, but just with COVID, spending a lot more time with family and dealing with the impact of COVID is really tough for some, and just had to refocus in that area. But back with the videos, trading has been amazing. This market has so much range. And as a trader, all you really want and you pray for is range. It doesn't matter what direction the market moves, you just want range. So, looking at the RTY, what do we see? We see this is a 4-hour chart, right? So we see the last few days. Looking at our lines, we just really haven't been able to just find any buyers and any bullish movement above the 2008 point, right? And even if you go to the 2019, you see these long wicks here on the 22nd of April, and this wick here on the that's still 22nd. It's that same day. Looking at that time frame, you don't see any bullishness even in these bounces. You don't see. And let me give you a comparison. If you're looking at the RTY, right? If we hit over here, and this is back in mid-March, when you see these pops, we hit these levels and we buy back up. You see how the buying is catching here. This is the 7th and 8th of March. Look how the buying is catching. Even though we have these long wicks, it's followed by green candles and trying to make higher levels, right? Here, you can see it here on these lower wicks where you see the pullback and the buying. This is different. This is multiple days that you're seeing here where, the 6th here, this is the 7th. This is the, what is that? The 8th. So just this past week, you see the buyers were struggling in the RTY to try to gain some traction. And I think that's interesting. And so what I would be watching for going into next week is, we see this lower wick here on the 7th where we pierced the 1990 area, right? But what happened? Bought right back up. And then here again on the 8th, we closed below that. Next candle buys us right back up. Then we get a rejection at the top. And then we drop down here and we bounced here above the 1990. So what I would be watching for, if I was looking for a trade on the RTY, personally, right? I would want to see bullish action above the 2019 area, right? I want to see buying candles above that. And if I see that, then I will say, hey, there's a possibility we might get to this 2057. These dashes, these colored dashes that you see, those are pivot lines, right? And these also really help. These are power of pivot lines. They're awesome. So we want to see, I'll get back to that later. We want to see if we're bearish below 1990, meaning selling candles below, and then we see negative drifts to 1962 and potentially lower. And above the 2019 area here, what we want to see is bullish candles above, and then see if we get positive drift to 2057. So you want to see those buyers come in strong, and you want to see some long candles, and you want to see volume, and you want to see separation from the 2019 area. This area right here is a little bit of a box, right? And if the buyers can't recruit more buyers to push this up, then we're going to go on and drift back down. We're going to go down. And let's head over to the MES. We'll see. Remember, the RTY does have banks, right? And even though interest rates are going up, things are a little bit interesting right now for banks, because if you look back on some of the legislation that had passed over the last few months, right? Back into the beginning of the pandemic, we have moratorium on on foreclosures. We have just so many people that have gone into forbearance and chosen not to pay their mortgage, and people are saving. So things are really interesting right now in trying to figure out this market. And as those, I'll say those government induced economy supporting legislation fades and expire, we'll see. We'll see how much money do the consumers really have with inflation at all-time highs, and just the cost of things is so much more with a lot of people still struggling with jobs, right? And so, not to go on a soliloquy, right? But when you look at the job numbers, this is what's really interesting. The job numbers are location based. You can give me job numbers and say, hey, there are X amount of jobs available for people to have. That sounds great to just give me this number, but it doesn't, that dog doesn't hunt without context, right? And so the context could be, okay, are there let's say you say there 50,000 jobs available. Okay, how many of those jobs are in Oklahoma City? How many of those jobs are in Sandy, Utah? How many of those jobs are in Okeechobee, Florida? So you can tell me that there are all these jobs in the economy. That's a general statement. How many of those jobs are in my city that I can get to with public transportation? How many of those jobs are paying enough for me to be able to pay the bills where I live? How many of those jobs? So I think it's a nuanced conversation that when we look at the subjective number of it, like the subjective number, oh, are we more jobs, less jobs? All those things are, it's all subjective. It's hard to quantify what that really means for the economy when you're looking at individuals. So saying that people may not want to work or people are not going back to work, where? What's that job paying? What's the qualifications? Do the people have the qualifications? So are you saying that people that are qualified are choosing not to work? And I think we have to see, right? Because I think sometimes those numbers, they look a certain way. That's why, like, those things I barely pay attention to. I only pay attention to chart movement. I want to know where we are, what the levels are. I'm not really concerned too much about what the news is going to be, whether beats earnings, miss earnings. I don't really care. Job numbers, positive, negative. I don't really care. Interest rates up, down. I don't really care. I just need to be able to figure out when I'm getting in, if people are buying or selling, and which way the market's going. If I could figure that out, all that extra, I'll call it noise, is really irrelevant. Like, you just have to figure out which direction for your time horizon, meaning how long you plan to be in the trade, whether that's a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, couple of hours, couple of days, couple of months. Which direction do you expect the market to move based on your time horizon? And if you can figure that out, and for me, it's, more scalping. So I'm, in and out in seconds to minutes, right? So all that news to me is not really relevant. I just need to know I need to know my levels. I need to know where the volume is, and I need to know the trend. And once I have that information, I can figure out my trade. Whatever Warren Buffett is saying is not important. Whatever the Fed is saying isn't important to me, just for my trade. For my life, yes, it may be important, but for my trade, it's not important. It doesn't matter to me if the Fed raises 50 times. It's like it's not really relevant to me, because I'm in and I'm out. I've already secured what I need to secure for the day. And so whatever else that they're doing, or the market's choppy, all those things aren't relevant to me. It's important in a holistic way, but for trading, the less noise, the better. And so you may hear me discuss those things, but I've done my best to make it that it doesn't matter for my trading, sort of what the news is. So even here, looking at the MES, right? Same thing. Even though this looks a little bit better, but we're not seeing higher highs. We're not seeing an acceleration to the upside. And you can look at, multiple days below the 45.13s where we can't find bullish movement above. That's a big deal. We want to see how that plays out. Can we go higher? Yes. So if we look at this, let's pull this down. So if we look at this as far as waves, right? This is a boom, lower low. This is the previous high, lower low. This is potentially a lower high here, lower than this high here, back on the 5th and the 4th through the 5th. Look at that. So this is a lower high here on the 8th and the 7th that is progressing to that high. So what we don't want to see is a lower low, right? And so that's what's interesting. I like looking at things in waves. And this to me looks like as if we're trending in a downward fashion. We have to see if there's news that reverses that or something else that reverses that. But looking at the 4-hour chart, right? And I'm a 5-minute trader, right? I look at the 5-minute chart. But I look at the 4-hour, try to see just the general overall direction. There's a good chance we can, drift down. We'll see. But I'm watching this, just looking at this from back in March till now. Lower highs, lower lows. What's the next wave? Is this the high wave, right? Because this is the low wave. Is this the high wave? Are we going to break out of that pattern and go higher? If we break back below here, where are we going? So I think this is interesting. We saw this area here, which is the 23rd of March. Look at this little bounce here before we pushed up, made a higher high. So that's interesting. We have to see. And what's funny is if you move over to here on the 6th of April and here on the 7th of April, what line did both of those flare downs touch? The 44.44 line, 75 cents if you want the exact, right? So that's interesting to me. So we'll watch and see how this plays out next week. Let's head over to my favorite futures instrument. I love it. Trade it every single day. MNQ. I love the MNQ because of range and similar thing, right? This high is here on the end of March, leads to this lower high here, 4th, 5th of April, lower low, 1st through the 3rd of April, lower low, here on just this week, right? On Friday. And so I think this is interesting. We'll see if we drop lower here, but what would we expect? The last bounce, we had a bounce here or a reaction at 14,231 and another reaction here at 14,192. We'll see how that plays out. Are we headed down? That's interesting, right? We have to see. This looks as if this is trending down. So I like playing candle waves and looking for patterns there. We are below the 20 on the 4-hour. That's interesting. The 20 crossed through the 50 on the 4-hour. We see how that plays out. This orange line here is the 200. And everyone uses these things differently, but I think that's interesting. For me, it looks bearish, but I'll see how we open and how we play, and I'll play these levels and the trends. But just looking at that, looking at the overall market, it does look interesting, right? There's going to have to be something that comes out, some type of news that changes the momentum, in my opinion. And we'll see if that happens. Headed over to Amazon. Amazon sold through our 3085 line. We're looking like we're going a little bit lower here. We have to see how that plays out. It just looks not great, right? Lower high, lower low, much lower low. We'll see if, how far this low goes. But if we below the 3085, 3068 is next, then 3020, then the 2950. I don't know if there's going to be that much of, I'll say, acceleration to the downside. We could easily have news that pops this back above and tries to save this level. If we look back here from the 25th of February through the 3rd of March, look at these attempts to break above the 3085 that were rejected, and then we went down. We pulled back to it here, saw this flare up after hours on the 9th of March. Then we managed to break through on the 17th of March, saw this back test on the 17th of March also, and then we took off. Look at that buying. That's awesome. 3085 all the way up to 33.8, 33.86. That's a nice move. But we're back there now, and it looks like as if we're bearish below. So will we have the same type of reaction as far as an extension down that we had here on the break above, on the 17th? So that's interesting. So the last time we bought above this level, the pull through, rejection. So this is telling us the potential is down to 2780s if we get acceleration here. So that's interesting. Not saying we're going there, but this is interesting. It's potential. Below that level, look at the extensions. If you just look at this on the 4-hour chart, right? When we've broken below the 3080s, gotten a little bit of volume, we've seen a dip to the 2780s, right? Look at that. Here, happened here. That's twice. Here it did not happen. We popped back above. Here happened again. That's 3 times. Can't get back above, but we did back test. Back down here again. That's 4 times. And here we broke back through. That's a pretty good pattern there that I'll be watching out for, right? And we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's interesting to watch on Amazon. So we'll see what we do next week. If we pop back above and we're bullish above, then yeah, looking for a long. But we'll see how that plays out. I think that's interesting on Amazon. Let's see. So let's head on over to, we'll come back to Tesla. Let's go to Netflix. Now I think Netflix is really interesting. Let me pull this up so we can really broaden this chart out. So if you look at Netflix, oh, come on. We don't need any of that. Where did that come from? Was that here? Close all that stuff out. Okay, if we look at Netflix, right? So the interesting thing on Netflix, and I actually gave a friend a play on Netflix. So what I was saying was, this is actually really recently. This is like, what day is this? So right around here, right around the first. I think that's right around the first. So what I was saying was, hey, I'm trying to remember if it was a 4-hour chart, but look at this 367-ish area, right? 366-ish. So when we push down to the 366 area, it seems as if before we go lower, we go back and test up here around that 380, 470, right? Here's one chance where that happened. Down here, we dropped, we bought back up, pushed through there, came back down, right? And so I said, hey, on this one, watch for the 380 test. And it worked out, right? It worked out for them on the trade. And so they were in calls, I believe, from the previous Friday. And they were asking me, what did I think about it? I said, hey, I think we're going to hit those 380s if we hold above the 360, the 365, 364 area. If we hold this, we're gonna go back up and test that. It's like a janky little channel. So going forward, what are we watching? Now we broke below that, right? So what are we looking for? We're looking for more negative drift. So we're sitting right above the 354.28 area. I would watch for 343, 335, and 330. We have to see what the buying and selling looks like next week. The Fed, everyone's aware that what's going on in Ukraine is negatively affecting the market. They can see that there's a lot of pessimism, and a lot of people are selling. They're on the short side, right? So what we have to see is, with inflation raging, there is a lack of faith, and I believe the Fed said this. There's a lack of faith in the Fed's ability to be able to sort of I'll say taper this and sort of bring this in. The problem that they have, I believe, and this is not my area of expertise, but just thinking logically, before the Ukraine war started is when they talked about inflation and inflation being a problem. What they also mentioned was that they were going to plan a certain amount of raises to be able to stave off inflation. That was based on the information that they had at the time. So once the war between Ukraine and Russia began, you have a whole new set of variables that you didn't work into your original, I'll say, model when you were looking at the raising interest rates to combat inflation. And so, being that the what's going on between Ukraine and Russia is the great unknown, the great unknowable, what can the Fed possibly do when it comes to the tools that they have at their disposal to be able to combat inflation? It's going to be tough. So I think it's really interesting. It's something to really think about as you get into your positions. Just think about that, right? That's a unknown, and that's something that's definitely putting pressure on our economy and just the global economy, right? And so, greater than the humanitarian crisis, I think the question is, how does that impact what you do as far as your trades and your belief in positions, and how long you hold positions and stops and profit takes and trail stops and all those things? You really have to look at your trading thesis and the toolbox that you have and be careful, because day to day we're just, this is a headline market. We're run by the headlines, and their headlines dropping left and right. Just be careful. So we'll see how this plays out, but I'll watch, right? This gave us a great back test here at 364.59, this overnight area, but even during the day, it gave us a great back test here right around 365, trying to get back into this area so we can get here, 366s, and rise up. Nope, didn't happen. And once we got below, now we're testing the lower portion here from the previous day. So we're here. We sell below this, that does open 343. And when I say sell below this, that means if we sell below the low of that 353.69, we'll see if that plays out. That may open up that 343.17 area. I'll be keeping an eye on it to see how that plays out intraday. But my focus primarily has been on futures, primarily on the Qs, the QQQ. If I'm playing the options on it, and then also playing the M&Q, and it's been really good. For me, I've loved it a lot. Playing different tickers like Tesla, love Tesla a lot. Netflix, Facebook, I play them on and off. Apple, Microsoft. I love playing those tickers, but I really love the futures. So watching here, we're watching NVDA, and let's see. One moment. My fault. So we'll be watching NVIDIA, and we want to see, since we're below the 230.85, we have 221.53 next and 217. We'll see if the buyers step in here. But see if they hold the, if we get back up to 230.85, we get a back test of the 238. See if we go back down here to the 230.85. That'd be interesting. That's something to keep an eye on. Chips have been interesting. Just got to be careful right now. I think there's a shortage on chips again. You know how that goes. But those are the levels I'll be watching there. Head to Facebook. Almost done. Facebook is interesting, and We have to see if we drift down to the 219.88, then the 218.29, then potentially the 214.23. Where we are here, we look back to this area. This is what near the end of March, where it seems multiple days we held the 219.94 and 219.18. That's an interesting area to watch here. So watch for the 219.80s. And here, look at this back test on the 7th of April. We flared down and bought back above it. Flare down here to it. So what I would watch for if I'm watching Facebook is a close below that 218.29. If we close below there, that might open up a dip into the 214.23s. I'll be watching that on Facebook. And did we really look at Microsoft and Apple? I do not remember, but I'm going there now. Microsoft, interesting. Looks as if we may see a dip here into the 294.86 and 293. 293 looks a little bit stronger, like we may fade below that a little bit, might go lower here. So I'll watch to see how that plays out. We saw these sell downs, and then look at these wicks, right? That means the sellers couldn't find any love down there, but they found some love on Friday, and you can see where we're progressing to, testing those lows. Have to see how that plays out. A lot of these times when I'm watching these stocks, I'm always try to figure out where the buyers may be, right? And where people may be trapped. And when you see, especially in the futures, you see an insane movement back to the upside after some overnight selling, I'm not surprised, right? And so what I'm looking for is what are the levels that I think the buyers are going to push us to make it comfortable for them to get out. And we're small fries, right? The big dogs are spending the big bucks, and they're dropping millions and millions of dollars on these positions. They're not going to take a loss. So whatever they need to do to move that up, if they're all in agreement, we're going to move. Not a conspiracy theory, it's reality, guys. And so whether you, one of the things that I've really 170.07, this is interesting. So where we are now, it looks like if we can't get back above this 170.07, maybe 167, 65, then lower, looking at the right here off the quarterly pivot is this purple here. So we flared into it and bounced. We had to see if we sell through, then that opened the 168.11. Then we can go lower here. That's interesting. Last quarter's pivot, 165.97. This is an interesting setup on Apple. So we'll see how Apple plays out, but I'll be watching to see if they get us back into the 170s or if we continue to sell. If we continue to sell, I'll definitely be looking for a short setup here, but I'm looking at all these things on the intraday chart, right? And so let me go back to the MNQ, which, well, before I do that, let me take you over to CI because healthcare was pretty strong this past week. And what I want to show you is what you could have waited to see. So if you've watched any of the previous videos, these are all lines that have been here. These aren't new lines, right? So these levels are just valid. These lines are strong. Pivots are strong. So below the 247, what you've seen is that we've had struggles when we get above the 238s, trying to get to the 247s. We've had struggles getting there. You can trace this back whenever you want to, right? Look at this level, 247s, push above, sell back through, push above. And this is back in March of 21, right? 18th of March, 2021. Look at that, trying to get through, finally got through here, broke above, took some movement, pulled back to test, and we're off, right? When we came back through, we didn't find any buyers. And this is now in June. So that's probably news related, found no buyers. And we just sold through there like a hot knife through butter. When we come back this way to the 247s, what we're looking at is the same thing. Here we tried to push up there, couldn't quite get there, sold back below. Now here, We're trying to get there again. Can't get there here. Look at how we're sort of on the pullback in. Look at the difference, right? On these, when we pull back to the line, we couldn't find any strength, and we sold back through, back tested, and we're selling. Same thing here. We got through, can't find any strength off the 238s, sold back through. This time, right? Can't get through, made a little bit higher, but can't get through the 247.05 area, 247 area. Sell back to the 238s. This time we found some buyers, so we didn't sell through. Bounced up again, couldn't get through. We're not selling through the 238. Look at the strength. So once we made a push through here, push through here, push through here, then a close above, right? That was, like they say, supply becomes demand, right? Previous supply becomes current demand, previous demand that's broken becomes supply, right? And so now that we sort of popped the top here, pull back the next day intraday off those 247s, and then we're off. And so that's interesting, right? We have to see how this plays out, but that's what you could have watched for. If you're tracking this, you'd set your alert around the 247 area if you were tracking this, and then you'd been able to take the next day this buying. But you know, me, love the futures, and what I will be watching is the MNQ and seeing if we go lower here on the 4 hour. And I'm really going to be watching this on a 5-minute chart. And that's really what I'm going to focus on, because that works really well for me. And let's see, that's the quad chart. So when I'm trading intraday, this is what I'm watching, and some sort of what I'm watching may change, but this is what I've got my eye on when I'm trading intraday. This is what I'm watching, all these movements and all these different charts. And this is the S&P right here. This is specifically the MES. This is NASDAQ, the ticks. I'm watching the ticks there. I'm watching Apple, Microsoft, and this is the QQQ because I'm also trading the QQQ with options. And this is the MNQ. I'm trading that too. And so that's what I'm watching intraday, right? And I may, jump over here. Let me slide this down. All right, let me slide this down so you guys can see the full chart. I may jump over here and take a peek at Tesla and AMD, see what they're doing. But that's what I'm watching when I'm trading intraday. Like I don't have 10 screens or 20 screens or 30 screens. I don't need it. And I like the tick, I kind of use it, but sometimes I'll pop something else over here. It just depends what I'm doing. Like I'll pop Tesla here. If I'm in a Tesla live trade, I'm in Tesla. I'll pop it here so I can follow Tesla. And one of the things that I love to do is if I see a short setup on Tesla that matches what I'm doing with the Qs, I'll take my Qs entries and like this break, right? Break below this trend up against the pivot, rejection, break below the trend, we're below the 200. I'll take that short. But if I was to, for example, let's remove the tick. Actually, no, let me do something else, and I'll show you what I mean, because I think this is interesting. If you look at the so look at this area where we sell, right? So look at the same line on my other charts. I look at I follow the ES at the same time, right? Because that helps me with all my my Qs trade, my futures trade here. So if I'm watching this, let me pull. So look at all these. Look at when they all sell. Look at that, the dashed line, this dashed line here on all my charts. You notice something? They're all selling around the same time, right? And I think that's interesting, but that's the way you take it. Like, I'm not shorting a tech stock on a day where the Qs are bullish, and I'm not longing a tech stock for me, right? One of the big boys, one of the blue chippers. I'm not longing them on a day where the MNQ or the QQQ NQ when they're bearish. And so that's one of the things that I look for. Thank you for watching this video. And please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Power of Pivots, where you can look forward to seeing videos from me, but also videos from Elisa as she shares how she uses her power of pivots to be able to find great setups intraday, pre-market, post-market, and also swing plays. I thank you so much for your time, with safety and security for your family and continued success in your trading. Have a great rest of your day. Yeah.